Welcome to YGTV and YG One-on-One, written by FlexScripts and sponsored by Health Payment Systems. I'm your host, Paul M. Neuberger, president of the Young Guns Movement. On YG One-on-One, I bring CEOs, business leaders, and more to the set right here at Serendipity Labs to discuss who they are, what they do, and how they got there. YG One-on-One, written by FlexScripts, is just one of 4 shows here on YGTV, our very own channel, designed to help you grow and succeed in your career, business, and life. If you haven't yet, click the subscribe button below so that you don't miss a single episode of YGTV. And if you're on the go, you can also listen to this episode on the Young Guns podcast. My guest today is Pat Koppa, president of PFlow Industries. Pat has a storied history across Harley-Davidson, Power Test, and 4 business interiors. If you will, please join me in welcoming Pat Koppa to the stage on YG One-on-One. If you're a CEO, listen up. Odds are you're paying too much for your employee benefit pharmacy spend. How do I know? I work with FlexScripts. They're the PBM police, delivering their average client 15 to 20% savings on their pharmacy benefits. Think how much money that is. FlexScripts makes sure your PBM keeps their promises and meets your guarantees. And if they don't, FlexScripts holds them accountable and gets you what you deserve. Stop paying too much for your pharmacy benefits. Get FlexScripts, the PBM police, on your side. Start the conversation today at flexscripts.com. That's flexscripts.com.
For more than 80% of families, today's medical billing practices are confusing. At HPS, our goal is to improve the healthcare experience for the patient by making medical bill payments less stressful. In Wisconsin, that's all made possible by our comprehensive independent healthcare provider network. We simplify billing and lower costs for everyone involved in healthcare and offer various ways for individuals to pay without breaking the bank.
Well, Pat, thanks for being here today. It's wonderful to have this conversation with you.
You're welcome, Paul. It's great to be here. It's a cool experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thought you were used to all these lights everywhere you go, the paparazzi and such.
Yeah, no, I haven't done things like this since my days at Harley. It's been very low key since then.
Yeah, well, stick with me, Pat. We'll make you famous. How about that?
All right.
So, the first question I want to ask you here today to really kind of get this conversation going. I mean, you're somebody who's been in leadership for a while. I know you're a very humble man, so I'll say it for you, but you're a very effective, accomplished leader. In your opinion, are good leaders born or are good leaders made?
Oh, that's a great question. So I've thought about that, and as much as I want to say they're one or the other, I do think it's a combination. I remember distinctly back in high school when I was in a school musical for the first time. I was an athlete and I did the musical. Like I wanted to go to the cast party. And anyway, the director took me aside and said, you know what, you need to help because we're having some challenges and you're just a natural born leader. And she was kind of like the first person to say that, and I didn't know what she was talking about. I didn't know what that meant. I just am who I am, but so I would say in that way you think, well, maybe some people are born with these traits, they just kind of have it where they just step up and lead and maybe not even realize they're doing it. But then I do know for sure that I've met a lot of people who are great leaders because they've crafted it. They've really learned to be a good leader by applying great techniques, tactics they know that work to motivate people, inspire people, give them direction, give them vision. And those people actually turn out to be probably the best leaders, the ones who are developed into a fantastic leader.
So you got me curious here. You talked about a musical. Were you dancing around in a leotard? I mean, what was that all about?
No way. No. No, I was in a musical though. I was in West Side Story, so I got to wear jeans and a leather jacket and a T-shirt. That was really cool.
Okay, yeah. We might have to have you sing at some point here.
Okay.
Now you got me curious.
Only if there's time.
Okay, good. So you talk about this leadership development. Some people have it, some people get it nurtured, etc. When did you first start realizing that you had these leadership capabilities? Was it early in life? Was it later in life? What did that look like for you?
It was definitely not early in life, because I think like any adolescent, I was always questioning my acceptance, if people liked me, if I was cool, if I had friends, did I say stupid things? I think based on other people, I think that's common, in life, you have self-doubt. But as I started to get older, it really wasn't until I got out of college. Well, it's not true. In high school, in sports, I was chosen to be a captain of the baseball team and the football team. So you figure there must be some sort of reason why they do that. You start to get hints that maybe there's some sort of leadership traits that I have. But it was really once I got out of college and I had joined the Navy, so I went into officer candidate school, and in officer candidate school, I knew nothing about the military, obviously, and they shave your head and you're treated like dirt the first portion of time you're there, and then you get to be a little more treated like a human being again. But they interview you for leadership roles, and through this interview process, I just was myself, and they ended up choosing me to be the second in command of the whole regiment. And I don't know why to this day, but at that point I thought, okay, well, these guys are into this stuff, and they picked me to be the second in command, and I have no military experience, so there was something with that led me to think I must have these traits that people identify as leadership traits. So that was probably the first real revelation for me, that it seemed legit. And then beyond that, I went through the Navy and was recognized for various achievements and getting things done and having a positive impact on my men. So I guess that reinforced it also. And then after that, it just kept kind of building. I think you build confidence so you have some abilities, and then that gives you maybe the confidence to speak up and make decisions and try things, and eventually that can lead you to be a better leader.
Sure, yeah. One of the things you had talked about in your answer there that I think resonates with me personally, and I think a lot of leaders watching this program, is self-doubt. I think self-doubt is something a lot of people struggle with, and it's tough. As an alpha male, alpha women watching this too, we're supposed to act like we have everything together. We're not supposed to let them see us cry or sweat or anything like that. But sometimes we can be our own worst enemy when that voice of doubt just gets louder and louder. How were you able to successfully get past that? You had referenced when you were younger, you had that self-doubt. There's probably still some of that today. You wouldn't be human if you didn't have some of it. Yeah. But how have you been able to move past that? What did you do to kind of silence that voice from time to time?
That's a good question. I mean, self-doubt definitely comes into play. I think faith. Nowadays, faith has a lot of impact on me and my self-doubt. Self-doubt in my past may have come from lack of experience or lack of knowledge or lack of being in a position to make a decision. And some of that then comes with practice, and you learn that you can make decisions and you can move on. We had a saying in the Navy that was one of my favorites I still carry forward to this day, which is don't polish the cannonball. Which is meaning if you have enough information to make a decision, you make the decision, 80% of the knowledge. Make the decision. Don't try and get 100% perfect knowledge and information to make a decision. And once you start to realize that's the way you're taught, I was taught, that's how you should think, then self-doubt is you have doubts, but you think, well, I got enough. I have enough information to make a decision. And if I'm wrong, we'll adjust. So that's one of the things that has helped me, is that idea that you don't have to have perfect information to make a decision, and that helps with some of your doubt, and at least in decision making. But the other part I was mentioning was my faith, is that especially in stressful situations where I've got some doubt or stress about a situation, someone's upset, a customer's upset, people are fighting at work, or something's gone wrong, I actually found that if I just offer a little prayer to the Holy Spirit to bring me peace and confidence, it happens instantly. And the most amazing part about all that is that I still forget to do it regularly. Even though it works, every time I do it, if I just offer that little, Holy Spirit, be with me, it calms everything immediately. And I could equate that to also limiting a lot of self-doubt too.
Sure. What are some of the things that drive you in life? I mean, you're a hard-charging guy. You've been a successful guy over the course of your career. You've accomplished a lot of things, and we'll unpack that a little bit as this conversation continues. But what are some of the things that really drive you on those bad days, on those difficult days, the days of self-doubt, maybe the days like you feel like you're not living up to your own expectations? What keeps you going, Pat?
There's an internal motor that I have that I got a lot of gas in the tank. I've got a lot of drive. I want to get stuff done. So that drives me. I'm driven to not fail. So not that I haven't ever failed. I have failed. But I'm driven not to. So I work like crazy to try and figure things out and find success. But I'm also, I really like the idea of creating an organization where people enjoy coming to work, where they feel satisfied that they've accomplished something great together. And I feel we had that last year, in fact, in the whole pandemic mess, that I feel like everyone really felt like they accomplished something. But I've told employees in different jobs, I think I first gave this type of speech at Power Test when I said, after reflecting about, I was in my 40s, late 40s, what am I doing in life? What's my big contribution, or what is I won't even say big, what's my contribution to this earth, And I told the employees, I said, I pretty much realized by now I'm not going to be a professional football player. I'm not going to be a famous singer. This is what I do. I lead people. And I lead an organization. And if I'm going to lead an organization, I want to lead an organization that's a great place to work, where people come here and they feel appreciated, they feel like they're heard, they feel like they have contributed, they feel like we've achieved things, great things together as a team, and then also celebrated with some financial rewards and success as well. And so that's kind of what drives me, is I want to do that. I want to create that place where people think it's a great place, a great organization, and they're proud of being part of it.
Yeah. Now you've been the president of PFlow Industries for
about 16 months now.
Okay, so you still got that new executive smell, so to speak.
Yeah. It's exciting.
It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Good.
Well, what have you found have been some of the biggest challenges that you've had to face as a new executive at an organization like PFlow Industries, and what are you doing to tackle those challenges?
PFlow has been the least difficult organization to enter of the ones I've been in since Harley. So Power Test had its unique characteristics, and people 4 had a whole bunch of unique dynamics and business dynamics and business challenges. Here at PFlow, people were like ready for a leader to come in, a different type of leader. And many of them were looking for a little more organization. And they were looking for a little more planning. PFlow had been successful, and my predecessor is a brilliant guy, and he's a great guy. He's the best boss I've ever had, actually. He's just a good teacher and no ego. But they weren't the best at planning. It's kind of like, there's the current, I guess, something emergency of the moment, And it was driving people down a little bit on the leadership team, especially. So I think they were hopeful. That helped. They were very hopeful that we could bring something there that would help them be less disorganized and a little more under control.
Yeah.
And that really, we brought in the EOS system, which was a little plug for that. But that I implemented that at Power Test with Alan, and then we implemented it and both those had varying degrees of success. But coming to PFlow was one of my first observations to my boss, Ted, was that we need a management system in place here, and I know one that works. And so we brought that in place, and that really gave people the ability to see, okay, there's a plan here. We've got a 10-year plan and a 3-year plan, and we got a 1-year goals, and They didn't love all the accountability stuff at first because they had to actually do what they said they were going to do, and I was going to check up on them and make sure they actually did it, and they didn't love that. They didn't hate it, but I could tell they didn't love it. But they've grown used to that more now. And so maybe the biggest challenge of this company was establishing a culture more of accountability and a little more teamwork, a little less finger pointing.
Well, how do you go about doing that? Because I'm assuming PFlow Industries is not the only organization that maybe doesn't have the greatest culture of accountability at one point. I would say that's probably the rule as opposed to the exception. There's several organizations maybe that struggle with that. So if somebody's watching this today and they say, yeah, that's our problem. We don't have a culture of accountability. How do you go about starting one?
Well, it starts with my favorite line from my favorite president, who was Ronald Reagan, who said, trust but verify. And it starts with that. And it's a fine line because people don't like working for a boss that doesn't trust them. But trust is also earned. And so you have to earn that trust. When you say you're going to do something and then you actually do it repeatedly without follow-up from anyone like your boss, then you've earned that trust and you wouldn't have to be checked up on. But if there are people who, in a culture where people make commitments, you bet, I'll get it to you by Friday. And you start to realize that doesn't really happen, then you start to say, you start to get more specific and use little techniques that I've learned from my past. Little things are implemented here, in fact, are things like some guys are notorious, should have it by, I hope to have it by tomorrow. Okay, well, that's not a plan. So when can you have it by? When's a date you can give me? I can get it done by Thursday. Okay, what time on Thursday? And when you ask for a time, oh my gosh, does it change facial expressions and body language? You're like, time?
Is it hot in here?
Yeah. Okay, I'll have it by 1 o'clock on Thursday. Okay, great. 1 o'clock on Thursday. And it works, little stuff like that. So it's introducing methods that make the message clear that this is not optional, it's not a suggestion that you're going to do this, you're actually committing that you're going to do this, and I'm asking you for that commitment and letting you give it on a date and time you can agree to, but then I got to follow up with them. And then once they start to do that, then they start to learn. It's not perfect, but they'll start to learn to act that way on their own.
One of the things you had said earlier that I thought was interesting is you had described yourself as a different kind of leader. Now, I've known you for a while. I would agree that to be true, different in a good way, of course, but how would you describe yourself? If you're a different kind of leader, Pat, you said it, not me. What does that mean? What kind of a leader are you?
You sure I didn't mean odd?
Well, I think that was assumed, yes, for sure.
Well, I suppose I may be a different kind of leader in my motivations, I guess might be one thing. Different kind of leader also in that I've cobbled together a very, different sort of background that gives me a different viewpoint on how to be a leader. I do think my Navy background definitely formed me because I was this young 22-year-old commissioned officer trying to lead enlisted men, and they teach you leadership things in the Navy, things like lead by example. Talk is very cheap. Your men are going to watch what you do, not what you say. And if you want them to act a certain way and have certain ethical standards, you have to have those all the time. And my dad taught me that same thing in our family grocery store. So that was my background. That helped form me. The whole idea of reprimand in private, reward in public. That was a Navy edict of leadership, and I couldn't agree with it more. I mean, anytime you can praise someone in public, you just won more of that behavior because people generally like that, and they'll do more of that because they got a good recognition in front of their colleagues. You reprimand someone in public, and they will never forget you for that. And they will not really be all that happy about going to bat for you in the future. Now, if you reprimand them in private and they can adjust their behavior and get better, they'll respect you for that. So it's little things like that. And treating people, I think it comes back, maybe I'm different because than some leaders in the mainstream, because I try and act out or model my Christian values in my leadership. And that's not that hard to do, but generally it comes down to you have to really care about people, not just as little tools in the operation. And it's easy for me to fall into that trap. Hey, these people got to get these things done so we can be successful. But they're real people. And if you care about them, they'll care about you. And another great line, as we talk, they come out from all my years. They just show up in my head. But no one, especially walking into a place new, the approach you've got to take is to learn about the people. Because no one cares about what you know until they know that you care. So the first thing's all about doing things to let them know that you care about them. Like at this job, I learned everybody's name in the company really in less than 2 weeks, which for me, being a self-proclaimed bad with names guy, 8 years ago, I've grown into be a pretty good with names guy. And it's not like it's easy, but I just reinforce it, and I care about learning the person's name. That's where it starts, is just caring about learning their name instead of just knowing I'm going to forget it right after, like I used to be. But when you know everybody's name, that starts to get chatter. I know everybody in the shop. I know all their names, and that buzz goes around the company. Like, yeah, this guy knows all our names. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. How have you found you've been able to successfully motivate people over the years? Because I would say that's one of the hardest things to do in leadership. Although you're the top of the organization, you've got a very important job. It could be your idea, it could be your strategy. This is where we're taking the organization moving forward. There's no way Pat can do it all by himself. You got to get buy-in, you got to get people motivated, you got to get them excited. Mm-hmm. But that can be tough for some leaders to do. How do you successfully motivate individuals and teams?
It's very difficult. I mean, because I'm highly motivated just intrinsically, and you just think other people are going to be like that. You wish they would be, or you assume they will be, but it's hard to truly, successfully motivate a lot of people. I mean, I think providing the vision of where you're going that's one thing that's key to people. They need to know there's a hopeful vision ahead that we're doing this for. I think recognition is a great way to motivate people. I think acknowledging their ideas, implementing ideas, acknowledging great work, again, publicly patting people on the back, recognition programs, those motivate people. Being told by your boss you did a great job on something, even a little note, I found that really motivates people. It motivates me, but it also gives me a revelation that the times I've gotten that in my life are pretty small. People just don't take the time to do it. So maybe this is part of the ways I'm different also. I really focus on that. If someone does a nice job on something, I will tell them that face to face, or I'll send them a note while I'm thinking of it, and I'll make sure they know I think they did a really good job on something. And not with but work on this also. It's just, hey, you did a great job on that.
What was the best recognition you've ever received in your career, and what did that mean to you?
I think some of the best recognition came probably, even though it wasn't all that often. Al's a bit of a tough critic, but it made it very meaningful when you got something from him. And at one point he told me, because I wasn't sure, there was some self-doubt about if I could run a small company after being in a big corporation, and I had to learn it, and Al had confidence in me, but I wasn't sure if I was doing, he's awful, he likes to critique stuff as well quite a bit, so you hear a lot of that stuff. You don't always hear a lot of compliment, but he at one point said, "You're doing a great job. I'm 100% confident you're the right person to lead my family's business." And I thought that was pretty cool that he gave that vote of confidence. So that was really good. And then there was a boss I had at Harley, a guy named Gene Ostrom. I gotta call him. He was a really cool guy. He'd give you private feedback immediately if you did something that was kind of dumb or inappropriate word choice or whatever. He'd correct course right away. But he also then would really acknowledge when something went well, and he was a really good boss, really cool guy.
Mm-hmm. Is there a proper balance between sticks and carrots? I'm sure it depends on the boss. I'm sure it depends on the employee in question. But I can see both sides of the fence. I can see how people like Alan, to some degree, maybe do more critiquing or some more gentle sticks, kind of the tough love kind of a thing. Let's not rest on our laurels. On the flip side, I can see why people might do more carrots, especially if somebody might be a little bit more sensitive, want to keep recognizing you for good jobs. This is good, this is good. In your experience, have you found, is there a certain mix between sticks and carrots? If so, what does that look like?
Well, I think you get off some carrots or praise. I'll call it praise. I mean, carrots are like incentives, right? I think that the praise is a great thing, but it has to be genuine. You can't keep praising people for superficial things that is fake, because I've been around people like that, and you're like, geez, nothing this person says really means that much to me because everything's great, or I'm doing great at everything, and that's impossible, right? So I think you have to have legitimate praise. And I think if you have acknowledgement of positives, then the occasional stick in private is even more powerful, because they don't want to let you down, and they want more of that praise. But I would think it's certainly, I'd hope the balance you want to move towards is certainly more carrot than stick. But I think sometimes there has to be consequences. I mean, you'll get results out of either one. But first of all, they won't enjoy the results they get if it's all stick all the time. And that comes back to my belief. I want it to be a great place to work. I want people to feel appreciated. I want to feel like they've accomplished great things. I don't want them to feel like they accomplished stuff because otherwise they would have got their butt kicked with a stick. I want to feel like they were triumphant, and recognized for it. And that's what I really think is best.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about this family grocery store. I heard you make a little comment about that. That seems like that was a pretty important part of your life. It almost kind of seems like a laboratory, a factory that has made you into the professional and the man you are today to some degree. Can you walk us through that? What was that like? Tell us about this grocery store experience.
I mean, this is not a big grocery store. This is Koppa's Farwell Foods and Full Belly Deli. Some of your folks may understand what that is. It's on the east side of Milwaukee on Farwell Avenue, just up from Lafayette Hill. So famous saying is, beer tastes better when you buy it at Koppa's. That's what my brother coined that phrase. But anyway, so growing up there, it was an eclectic neighborhood. It was really different clientele. But my dad was the owner. It's how he made a living to support our family. It's how I made my living to pay my way through Messmer High School, which is a big thing. That's where I met my wife, so but that's how I afforded to pay my own tuition, was earning money at the grocery store. Leadership there, I didn't have people working for me. I was the produce manager. It was, a great gig. Worked hard, worked lots of hours. But really, one of the bigger things I came away from there too was some of my dad's mantras, and one of my favorites was work expands to fill the space available for it. He would say that over and over again. So he'd make sure there was a list that everybody had stuff to work on, because otherwise if they had one thing, they'd make it last the whole day, but there's truth in that. You can pack a lot of stuff in if you're motivated and you got a lot to accomplish.
Well, you would mention in that answer Messmer. That's something that we have in common. I don't know if I've ever shared that with you, but my father is a graduate of Messmer High School in the early 1970s. For a brief amount of time, I used to do professional fundraising. I was the vice president of Messmer High Schools on the development side. Yeah. One of the things that you had said there about Messmer, if I heard you correctly, is you were working at the family grocery store to help pay your way through high school.
Yes.
Is that a little unorthodox, where the child pays their way through high school as opposed to the parents doing that?
I suppose not back then. Not that much. It wasn't horrifically expensive, at the time. But I was at a public high school for my freshman year after going to Catholic grade school, and the experience was quite unusual. With some pretty rough conditions. Our local Milwaukee Public School high school. So I asked my parents if I go to Messmer, and they didn't have the money to pay for it, but if I worked, I could earn the tuition, and so it was like $1,400 a year or something like that. That was back in 1979, 1980.
You're aging yourself back.
I know I am.
But even still though, to have a 14-year-old do that, and when you look at today's society, today's day and age, I can't think that there's going to be too many people that are early teenagers doing something similar. What specific life lessons did that teach you And how has that process kind of made you into who you are today?
Well, I think it taught me you gotta earn it. You know, nothing should be free. We didn't have many handouts. We came from a very middle class family, you know, and so we went to a nice Catholic grade school, and that's my parents wanted to instill our Christian values. And then after that, you went to public high school. That's what the budget could afford. And it was interesting because of my freshman year experience being rough as a physical environment, you know, even dangerous at times, it seemed like. You know, I had to consider what else I could do, and my parents couldn't afford it, but I could work and I could afford it. So it taught me the fact that I wanted to go there to Messmer motivated me to figure out a way how to make it happen. So working could make it happen, so it was just what I did. And you know, I took the bus to school down Capitol Drive, and every day took the bus to work down on the east side, took the bus home. That's what you did. And I think there's still kids in the world that, in certain socioeconomic groups, that do things that way. But not a lot of people that we know probably are doing that. You're right, it's probably kind of unique now.
Well, and on a personal level, I applaud you for supporting Messmer. I know you're a big advocate of that institution. I've seen what that organization has done in the life of my father. That was part of the reason why he wanted a Christian education for me and my brother, because he saw what it did for him, and them working with such non-traditional students, non-traditional families, and just seeing how well these students do. It's a very important mission, and I appreciate all that you do to support it.
It's my pleasure. You know, when my wife and I met there, sophomore year in high school, as 15 or 16-year-olds, it was a different school then. You know, it was just your traditional kind of Catholic high school in Milwaukee on the east side-ish, a little bit of transitional neighborhood, integrated to an extent, you know, probably still about 80% white, 20% black. Now it's strictly serving primarily the kids from the 53206 zip code and offering a quality Christian safe education option. And my wife Laura actually works there now.
Oh,
she works in a dual role in finance and advancement.
Okay.
And so she's part of the solution, which is really cool. So I get the updates and the news on what's going on with Messmer, but their mission has changed so dramatically from when we were there, and I think it's so much more important now. Because when we went, there was 7 Catholic high school choices or whatever for people that could afford them. But now they're really serving an important educational need in our community to try and change the world and a cycle of poverty through education, which I just firmly believe is the key.
I would agree. Yeah, and they can't do it alone. So it's wonderful that you support, and it's wonderful that you're such an outspoken advocate. If you had a crystal ball, I know you don't, but if you had a crystal ball, and I know you're an optimistic guy by nature, that's one of the reasons I love you so much, but if you're looking at the future of leadership, so the people that might be 10 years removed, 5 years removed from taking over Flow or organizations similar to it, are you optimistic let me phrase it this way, are you bullish or bearish on the future crop of leaders that'll be coming in the next 5 to 10 years, and what specifically makes you feel that way?
Oh, I'm bullish. Not every person is going to be a great leader, but when I see the people we have that I would consider future leaders at our company even, there are some sharp people and motivated and hardworking and, you know, just intelligent and generally collaborative and constructive and not destructive. You know, there's a good amount of passion for teamwork and for creating a great place together versus building their own dominion, you know, on their own at the expense of others. So I think I feel really good about, I think you've got enlightened leaders developing that care more about this, you know, themselves, but they care about the earth more than my generation did at one point, and care about people, I think, and care about racial justice, and they care about, you know, the climate, and they care about there's a lot of more awareness, I think, and I'm pretty bullish.
Good. Well, it wouldn't be an interview with a top executive if I at least didn't wade into these waters. I think you know that the past year and a half has been tough to lead an organization. You've got the pandemic. We had a very trying election season. You had mentioned racial justice and stuff like that, and there's been a lot of stuff in the community about that. What role should organizations play in conversations like that? Do you believe it's one of those things where an organization should say, well, you know, we have customers that are liberal, we have customers that are conservative, we have customers that are black, customers that are white, we're just going to stay neutral on these matters? Or do you think it's a part of corporate responsibility for an organization to speak up, to take a stand? And if so, how do you make a decision like that?
Well, you follow your instinct, I guess, and what you just know or believe is right. And so we don't overly communicate on those topics, but we do communicate. Speak of pandemic first, that's probably an easy one, but like the political aspect of mask or no mask and vaccine or no vaccine or overreaction, underreaction, we just wanted to keep the business open. And so we made it clear through regular communications from me to the employees that we're going to make this the safest possible workplace we can, and we're going to have rules in place, and you got to abide by them. And so we did that. And we didn't have a single case of COVID transfer amongst employees in our business, even though we kept going to the shop, worked the entire time, and we have 1/3 of our office staff in the office at all times, and then bring in another third, and then 2 weeks later bring in another third. So we did a rotating deal to keep the population density down. But I was very transparent with our communications. We talked about how many cases we'd have so far, how many had transferred at work, which was none, and has still stayed at none, and reinforced what we were doing to make it safe and be in compliance with CDC guidelines and everything we were doing, and kept an active, accurate log of who was out and when they're going to come back. We didn't give people's names, but we said anyone that's out has to get our permission when they can come back. We had strict controls. That's something I learned in the Navy. Day one, we started a log of who's home, what's their condition, and what are we setting as their return criteria. I did that with my young HR guy, and he managed the whole thing for 12 months. No one got back in without talking to John, who became a pseudo doctor. So we just open and transparent communication on that, and I got a ton of feedback on that, how much people appreciated what we were sharing to keep them to know what was going on at the company and the facts. They wanted to know the facts. So we did share those. I think on the side of racial injustice, we have a pretty diverse workforce. We probably have 1/3 or so of our employees are people of color. And we're in a neighborhood where that's more of the local workforce too. So I feel a sense of responsibility to help that community too, which we're working on. But we didn't get overly vocal on racial injustice. We didn't put a Black Lives Matter sign in front of our business or fly a flag, anything like that. But did send out a couple communications to employees about what was going on in the world and some of this that was happening. And our focus is going to be to live our values. And I made it a point because we have flow values. And I made it a key point to tell our employees that if the world were living our flow values of the passion having pride and passion, being friendly and fair, listening, learning, and leading, acting like owners and operators, and then working and winning together. Those are our values. If the world was doing this, treating each other with respect and being friendly and fair, we wouldn't see these kind of problems that we're seeing out there. So our focus is to make sure that in this building, on these premises, everyone here feels safe and respected and appreciated, and will be treated in accordance with our values. And people that don't do that will not find this to be a place to work any longer. So that's kind of how we reinforced it. We didn't get overly political on it.
Sure. Kind of taking care of what you can take care of,
Exactly.
Kind of being the change you want to see in the world, and hopefully it has that ripple effect as people go back to their families.
You always hope that, right? You always hope that example will change hearts and minds. And I think it does. I have enough people have given me some feedback, not everyone does, that's something you did or that a company did made a difference.
Yeah.
you feel like, okay, I think it does work.
What's life though, but it's tough for guys like you and I that are ambitious, that are driven. You know, sometimes we want to see that big change happen overnight. It doesn't always happen that way. One conversation at a time, one email at a time, one interaction at a time. But those inches add up. You gain 2 inches with this person today, you gain 5 inches next week, you fast forward 6 years, you're in the end zone with that person. But it's a bit of a process.
And it's incremental acts. It's so knowing their names, having conversations. I take laps around the company and manage by walking around when I can force myself out of my office and go do interesting work besides meetings and video calls. But one of the things we did when we're still working mandatory overtime because we're so busy. So we're doing 10-hour weekdays for the shop and then 5-hour Saturdays. And they're starting to get burned out. So then I initiated opening it up to office people to come in and work in the shop. I said, if you're mechanically inclined, you can listen to instructions, you can work with your hands, and you want to come in and help out. Everyone knows we're in a big backlog. We're trying to catch up. We're behind. Come on in and help. So we have done it 3 times, 1 each month. And we had a turnout of about anywhere between 8 to 12 people, depending on the week, coming in with no extra pay, just coming in to help in the shop. And the first time we did it, I had my steel toes on and my blue jeans and a PFlow t-shirt, and I was doing the grubbiest job, which was I was hanging steel fabrications on the hooks on the conveyor system that go through the paint line. And man, did that create a buzz. It was interesting. It was just good, honest work, and that's where they needed the help. But I had a guy come by and say, I've been here 18 years and I've never seen the president out on the floor working and moving parts around, So it's just, and it's 4 hours. But that kind of stuff helps build trust, and I think motivates some people. And but all those types of acts build up.
Well, last question for you, Pat, and we'll let you off the hot seat here.
Okay.
If you were to fill in the blank, how would you do this? The single most important trait a leader can possess is what?
Single most important trait. Well, it's kind of what I've talked about previously. I would say it's integrity. Integrity of concern for the people in your organization, of really caring. And it's the integrity of being truthful and being honest with your communication and expectations. Not sugarcoating, not avoiding a problem. All that it stems from integrity and having the intestinal fortitude to tackle challenges even when they're not pleasant.
Sure.
So having strength of character, I guess.
Well, if strength of character and integrity is the mark of a good leader, brother, you are a fantastic leader. I've appreciated the opportunity to get to know you over the years. I had a high bar for this interview. You exceeded that high bar. I learned a lot. I know our audience learned a lot. So Pat Koppa, PFlow Industries, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Paul. It was an absolute pleasure. Really, I enjoyed it. And I appreciate you as well. Your energy is contagious.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
What an incredible conversation we just had with Pat right here at Serendipity Labs. Certainly one of the best on YG One-on-One, which is written by FlexScripts and sponsored by Health Payment Systems. It's so fortunate that we could have Pat on the show, and now I've got a question for you. Who do you want to see on this program? YG One-on-One is about bringing together free thinkers and business luminaries who can help educate and inspire you to think unconventionally and break the rules of business. Drop your suggestion in the comments section below or on any one of the Young Guns social media channels. Speaking of social media, just a friendly reminder to follow the Young Guns movement on Facebook, LinkedIn, and right here on YouTube. We also distribute our shows as podcasts, so go ahead and give us a listen during your commute, workday, or even if you're scrubbing the toilets, whenever you choose. Thanks again to Pat Koppa, President of PFlow Industries, for sitting down with us here today on YG One-on-One. As always, I'm Paul M. Neuberger. We'll see you next time.